Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
Okay. Well, we'd like to ask you, why do you, can you present yourself?
Present myself.
Yeah.
I'm a retired professor at Temple University.
Okay.
I was teaching for 51 years around the world in Malaysia, China, Canada, and somewhere else, I forget.
Okay.
Oh, Philippines, United States. I published a journal out of my home called International Journal of Comic Art, which is now in its 21st year.
21st year.
And I've lived here in this house in Drexel Hill since 1976. I have 5 children, 1 deceased, and
Okay.
one of whom you know.
Yes.
Well, you know all of them, but
I do.
you also know Issa, who
That's right.
is deceased. So, yeah.
So what were you teaching so far?
I was teaching in the Philippines, in Malaysia, China, Canada.
Journalism and mass media communication?
Yes, journalism, mass communications, international communications.
Okay. So what do you think media and education is important?
Why I think media and education.
Yeah. Why do you dedicate your life to that instead of something else like science, politics, and all that?
Well, I was interested in journalism from grade school and interested in presenting ideas, and all through from 8th grade on, I was editor of on and off of the school newspaper, so I had an interest in journalism for many years, and for many years after that in doing research and in comic art, Asia, studies, etc. I think was important because I think the media are important. I don't like the way the media are now, not for the same reason that the commander-in-chief or idiot-in-chief Donald Trump says, but for other reasons that I think that they're very important, not just to instruct but to educate.
Sure.
Certainly media are educators. The use of radio, for instance, in many places to educate.
Sure.
Television's been used for the same way, and also the print media. So that, to me, that was a good combination of teaching and doing media studies. Also, I think that it met some of my goals, because my goal in high school was to become a foreign correspondent. And although I'm not a foreign correspondent, I am traveling all over the world. I'm interviewing people as a foreign correspondent. I'm seeing things firsthand, and I'm reporting on them. So, and still drawing a salary, or was drawing a salary from teaching full time.
But you also know a lot of cartoonists because you are in that world and you wrote about many cartoon, comics, and graphic novel work. So what can you tell the young generation of cartoonists who want to, embrace this career? Because I think also that cartoon is something that frees the mind, but it's also a very difficult profession to establish in. So what can you advise the next generation of young cartoonists and comic artists?
I advise them to read,
Sure.
to know things, to have something to draw about. I don't think it's worth much if you're just drawing for the sake of drawing. I think you should be drawing to
For a purpose.
A purpose, with a narrative, telling some story. Even in one panel cartoon, you tell a story.
That's right.
So I think it's very important for that reason. I would tell them not only to read and to know things, but to travel as much as they can, see other parts of the world, And I would also tell them to be very creative and also innovative in
Sure.
how they produce, but also how they distribute their works.
Tout à fait.
Because the situation is difficult in all the countries I've been interviewing. Cartoonists are having a rough time.
Okay.
Many of them have day jobs, all kinds of strange day jobs, because they can't make it as a cartoonist.
Okay, that's right.
So, be able to find other ways to use your cartoons to make a living, but also to educate, to inform people,
That's right.
to take stands, etc.
Okay. How about those who are struggling with censorship and free speech? Because we also know that you work in China a lot with the Chinese government, and people tend to think that the Chinese government is not so open to free speech regarding cartoonists. What is the issue in China?
Well, the issue in China is, of course,
Mostly in Asia.
yeah, in China it's the state and party controlling everything, and censoring those points that don't fit into the communist philosophy
Sure.
or the leadership of the country. But people do criticize in China through cartoons, mainly social issues, corruption, and things of that sort. I think there are much worse situations than China. China's always picked out.
So, excuse me.
Yeah, China's always picked out as an example. But I've been to countries where the cartoonists are facing worse situations
Than in China.
than in China, because they don't even have outlets in some of these countries.
Sure.
In Vietnam, for instance, some of the political cartoonists say they put their cartoons on Facebook mainly for friends,
Sure.
because they can't publish them.
Sure. Yeah.
And if they're online, the government can see them and control it. The same in Myanmar.
Sure.
We see in countries that cartoonists are being arrested, they're jailed, they're harassed, some of them are killed.
Sure.
So there's some bad situations. In India, for instance, a woman cartoonist who drew cartoons against a religious guru who had been raping his young followers.
Sure.
She drew cartoons about that, and the followers of that guru threatened her with death, with rape.
Sure.
They also threatened to put her name on a prostitute line so
Sure.
that people would call her and to ask for sex.
Sure.
So
So harassment.
very severe harassment, yes.
Okay. So we know that you've been publishing the International Journal of Comic Art for 20 years now.
Right.
So how do you see the future of this newspaper? Like,
Well, I guess,
what did this become as a future for cartoonists, because it's one of the stronger voice of cartoon and comic artists, which is actually free from any advertisement. So will you handle these titles to somebody when you retire?
if someone wants it,
Okay.
but only a crazy person would take it,
Okay.
because almost all of it is done in this house. So
Okay,
and it's the labor that I donate to that is free.
that's right.
I don't know very many people who want to do that, but if there is someone, of course I would turn it over, because I'd like to see it survive. As you say, it survived 20 years,
20 years.
and it's had 41 issues, all very thick issues. This is not one of the thicker ones.
Sure.
So we introduced a lot of the comic scholars through there.
Sure.
Many of them had their first publications in the International Journal of Comic Art.
Okay, so the last question would be, we know that you have been a jury member for the Pulitzer Prize for cartoons twice.
Yes.
And is that legitimate to say that cartoonists can say compete to win prize if they're struggling to make their work a bit, to make a living, can they still compete, or it's very, very difficult world to penetrate to win a cartoon award in the United States?
No, it's difficult, yes, but there are so many awards now.
Sure.
The Herb Block Award, there are a number of them that, besides the Pulitzer Award,
Sure.
that can be won. But I think a cartoonist struggling to make a living certainly could draw a cartoon or more than one cartoon
Sure.
that would be eligible for these prizes.
Okay.
And I think some of them have won them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know what you're saying is that you're too busy making a living that
Sure.
you don't have the time to create
Dedicate,
award winning.
yeah, sure.
But some people do.
Okay. Okay. Because many artists, even in Africa, are struggling with publishing their work, and it's very hard today. So, any advice for them? Because I teach comic and graphic novel, 9 art in university in Cameroon, and it's very, very hard for artists to actually publish just the work because there's no market for it.
All right.
So what can you advise those young people?
Basically what I said earlier, and that is that they can't just concentrate on drawing or
Sure.
with ideas to create cartoons, but also ideas of how they're going to distribute it
Sure.
and make a living
Give it
from
out
it.
of it. Okay.
And that's the hardest part of cartooning.
That's right. Okay.
And some people are doing it.
Okay.
One cartoonist two cartoonists in Taiwan
Mm-hmm.
that I interviewed a couple of weeks ago. They're one of them is drawing murals around
Sure.
the town with caricature, etc., that people can identify with,
Okay.
and he includes the local businesses on
Sure.
some of the streets,
Mhm.
and then he sells the copyright for 5 years
Sure.
to some of those businesses so they can use this scene on their
Right.
packages, on their boxes for carry out food and stuff like that. So
Yeah. That's how cartoonists can make a living.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's a tricky business. It's certainly not easy.
Okay.
The number of cartoonists who are having difficult finding venues has increased tremendously.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. So we're talking to John A. Lent. So he's one of the prominent critical cartoon and comic and graphic novel living legends. So he produces the International Journal of Comic Art, and we are in Philadelphia and Drexel Hill. Thank you, Professor.
Thank
we
you.
had this interview with your permission, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
thank
Right,
you.
Right.
Bye-bye.